that's the best part about recording before you actually technically launch is you actually have the conversation that you intend to have. And then what happens, then sometimes we go into like professional conversation, right?
Okay.
But like, I think hearing what pisses you off about the way people think about B2B is interesting, right? Like, people oversimplify it.
Correct.
And you've done this in so many different places, in so many different ways, and you understand the nuance and that not all advertising is created equal, and not all B2B means the same thing or requires the same tool for every job. So what is your take on all that?
Right. So I think, and part of it's, I've been around for a while. So when I think of B2B marketing, I think of two things. Either, branding, I'm sponsoring the PGA or whatever, sporting event or other thing, or I'm working for a salesperson to drive leads. And I do some of both of those things, right, as I do. And by the way, our customers are businesses, right? They're small businesses, they're medium businesses, they're enterprise businesses. But, I look at what I do every day, and it's everything from, direct response, PPC, someone sees an ad, clicks on it, buys our product, right? That feels like what I think of as consumer marketing, right? And then, I also drive leads for a sales team so they can go do an enterprise sale, right? So it's everything. And then all of the things in between, whether it's content, product marketing, PR, right? All of that. So I just think the buckets of B2B to B2C are so different now, right? A B2C used to be, I don't know, The Gap, or think of a big e-com company, and B2B was a huge global conglomerate, right?
McKinsey or whatever.
McKinsey or Fidelity,
Yeah.
like a big Chase Bank, right? A big company that wants you to feel something about it. I want to do both things. I want you to feel great about our brands and that you trust them and they have a good reputation, they do what you want. But I also want you to transact. I want you to see an ad or a piece of content or hear this podcast and go to shipstation.com or stamps.com and click on a button and buy some software.
So when you buy an ad, are you hiring that ad to do one or the other of those jobs, or are you hiring it to do both? Or maybe there's a third option. I don't know.
I feel like that is the question that if we could solve would unlock everything. It's tough. I definitely come into it from a ROI point of view, which is like, I need to drive transactions, right? Whether that's an ultimate sale or whatever. It's not entirely true, right? We look at advertising and buying advertising, top of funnel, mid funnel, bottom of funnel. Now, that doesn't mean that my upper funnel, I don't say, hey, did I get a trial or did I get a lead and did that turn into a customer? We do look at that. But then we look at, are you growing traffic to our site? Are you changing our quarterly brand survey? Are you improving our retention, right? Because we also advertise to existing customers as well as new customers. So it's not a great answer. It's a little bit of both.
Well, I mean, look, speaking of top of funnel marketing, what we do, because we're B2B, right? Big to very B to very big B.
Yep.
As an ad agency. And so we do a lot of content marketing, right? We try to put out thought leadership. And one of the things that's important, I think, is to make sure that you're actually tagging the brand that you're promoting at some point in that thought leadership
100%.
and content. And with that, I want to welcome you to the Media Roundtable podcast, Laura. We're finally doing this.
Yay.
I feel like we've been, dancing around each other for so many years without like sitting down and just having this type of a conversation. And you have really been a legend in the circles where I travel, right? Like it was LegalZoom.com that profoundly changed the trajectory of my career. You've been a part of Constant Contact. You've been a part of Cabbage in a CRO capacity. You've been, Uber CMO, and not literally Uber, but in the other sense. And most recently, you are the CMO at Octane, which for the uninitiated represents brands that we all know and love in this industry, like Stamps. and like ShipStation. And it's worth just pausing to acknowledge that, like, where we are right now having this conversation in physical space, mind you, not virtually, but we are actually here in Beverly Hills in the Podcast One studios, which was really, I think, the first serious, you could probably say mid-roll as well, but Podcast One was really the first venture into podcasting to really legitimize the medium in a major way. And you've been part of some of the companies that really built this medium. Stamps.com is one of those brands. Yes. And so I think it's like there's a lot of layers to what's all around us right now. You and I have been at this for a long time. And, you know, I do want to get deeper into B2B because I think there's a power to it. And I think that people make a lot of assumptions about marketing. You know, it's a branding medium, it's a visual medium, you know, it's you know, there's bottom of funnel and there's top of funnel and it's not both, right? And then the size of the B that we're talking about, and the methods that you go about to use these things, these are things that are increasingly important for all of us. And I think in light of what's happening in the world around us with AI, I think the value that any of our companies have to bring to the table is really changing quickly. And one of the only things that I think is going to help a lot of brands endure is what people think about and feel about their brand. And the brand needs to stay alive long enough by getting enough transactions for that even to be possible. So walking that tightrope is one of the beautiful things that I'm really excited to have you here talking about. So let's just go back to where we just were. When you think about the mechanisms of B2B, you're hiring it to reach multiple levels in the funnel. And do you believe that when you think about like the splashy TV campaign or the golf sponsorship or whatever, is that all bullshit? Or is there really a need to have that as part of the portfolio? How far can you really go into that upper funnel before you're just distracting from the day job?
I actually think it's critical and have kind of made my career on that, if you will, which is that some amount of upper funnel TV, whatever TV is that these days, whether it's linear, OTT, or CTV, or whatever it is, YouTube TV, is really important. The way that you change the perception that you can introduce new features, et cetera. It's really hard to do bottom of the funnel, right? A search ad that says, hey, ShipStation now offers returns. That's great, but you don't build trust. You don't build, you can't educate about capabilities. You can't do any of that with a, fast digital ad. And so you need to balance both. I think being top of the funnel, whether we're calling it TV, whether it's audio, whether it's content, whether it's sponsorship. I think sponsorship I put aside a little bit. That does, I think, some other things for a brand, but they all have to work together. And if you're trying to grow, you have to have that to improve. The way I think about it is your top of funnel is there to expand demand for your product, and the bottom of the funnel is there to capture it in an ideal world. It's not so black and white, but you need both.
But they're on the same continuum, but they're serving the same purpose ideally, right? And I think for me, I started in a very direct response universe where a small business lived or died based on whether or not they got enough phone calls that were high enough quality that they could convert from an ad. And I think over the course of my career, one of the things I've come to understand is that they're all trying to help grow your customers and your revenue, but the time horizon is often what's really at stake. And sometimes we don't actually clarify to say, like, when we're doing a campaign, are we intending that it's going to pay us back within the period that we're running it? is this one link in a chain of
Right.
messages that's going to come back to us? And in B2B, it seems like maybe the size of that B is going to impact how long it's going to take for your money to come back to you and what that time horizon really has to look like. Do you have a way of thinking about, with the different companies that you've worked with Octane and beyond, is there a different time horizon that you think you have to kind of bake into the forecasting of when you're really going to see those returns?
That implies a level of patience that I wish we had.
Right.
I would say I think about it a little bit differently. I think there's sort of two parts of it. I think one, when we're doing kind of full funnel marketing, the bottom of the funnel is definitely direct response. Did we get a trial? Did it convert to a subscriber, right? Mid funnel, pretty similar. The upper funnel, we look at that. But I think the other thing is that rising tide lifting all boats. I think when you're really good at the top of the funnel, it should be driving your brand search. It should be driving your non-brand search. It should be driving your affiliates and your partners, right?
Your conversion rate.
Right, exactly. All of that. So you may not capture the demand with that upper, but so I would say it's a little bit twofold, which is one, you're looking to see, maybe it's not directly attributable to that top of funnel, but is it rising your other channels, your other advertising channels? And then two, over time, are you getting it, right? Like you can't do one podcast or one television ad and expect some great response, right? It needs to build over time. So I think there's two things. One, you benefit from repetition and, right, that reach and frequency.
Right.
And then two, the conversion time is a little bit longer. I would say not that much longer.
In the space that you're in, if you were doing enterprise software, if you're doing like ERP systems, maybe that's a little bit more of a purchase cycle.
I would say that is a little more. One, are you improving your awareness, right? We all do brand surveys. How do people feel about ShipStation? Have you heard of us? Do you know what we do? Do you trust us, et cetera, right? So you want that advertising to improve those metrics. I also think that advertising, you're absolutely right, like over a 6-month horizon, et cetera, is it improving demand? And two, I think, again, the part that we don't think about enough is it helping retention? Do people stay with you because they see that, because they trust and know the brand?
Hard to quantify.
Very
the
hard to
impact,
quantify.
but so important.
Correct.
And if you only stare at bottom of funnel direct attribution, you end up with a very small campaign that may actually be holding you back from the total return on investment.
Correct. Right? And I started my career in finance, and so every day I open my dashboards and I look at that very detailed, how many trials did we get yesterday? How many subscribers yesterday? And I have to actively say to myself, okay, take a step back. Like, how are these other things doing? Maybe don't look at them every day. Just look at them on Monday or whatever it is, to have a little discipline, if you will, about not just driving bottom of the funnel.
Well, that's an interesting feature, I think, that is part of your career story, is that you've had a chance to, you have a very operational background, a financial background, and you've been a chief rev officer as well, right? So how do those broader experiences actually come into play with how you think about your work as a marketer?
I think a lot of it has to do with how much the CMO role has changed in the past 20 years, 15, 20 years. I think, when I started my career and went from finance to operating roles, the marketing role was much more about branding, which I did not know a ton about, and I'm not sure I even valued at the time. But as my career went along, and it's funny how my first marketing job was as a CMO. I'm it's like not great for how do you become a CMO?
You went straight to CMO.
Right. I had run like product and I had been a COO. I had run product and marketing, but never been a CMO. And it was interesting it was LegalZoom when I got the call. Someone who I knew from a million years ago was like, "We're looking for CMO," and I was like, "Oh, I'll think about who I know." He's like, "No, you should do it," and I was like, I don't know how to be a CMO. And he was like, look, we don't have someone who thinks about the customer enough. Right. And so
that was your first
that was
marketing
my first
gig.
Yeah, that was my first
I
marketing
had no
gig.
idea.
Yes.
I thought you were born a CMO.
No.
I mean, I guess in a way. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, but what was amazing about that job is there were great people there who knew the advertising space.
Yeah.
Right. I had a lot of experience in subscription, and LegalZoom was trying to shift from being a transactional business to a subscription business.
I remember that. Yeah.
And so I knew a lot about that kind of life cycle marketing, content, like that kind of stuff. And so it was just an amazing fit. But I, learned a lot there. I will say earlier in my career, I'd worked at the NFL as a general manager, and I really credit them with teaching me about branding. I had been lucky enough to be on the advertising council that our CMO ran, and just learned about making ads, running ads, measuring ads, and how to staunchly defend a brand. Like, how they, the shield means something, the stars mean something, and it was really cool. And so it really gave me appreciation for that side of it. And so I put that together with, frankly, knowing how to look at numbers, right? CMO job is I don't want to say it's a finance job now. There's other things to it.
Yeah.
But, I look at numbers all day. Like, how are we driving customers? How are we driving revenue? By the way, are we driving more customers, but are they too small? Are we driving the right customers at the right size, at the right revenue, at the right activation?
Right.
I think the job has just changed, which is how my very eclectic background
it helps serve
me
you being
there.
really outcome and metric driven. And I think the metric driven piece, it seems like I came into the advertising world, in the early 2000s, and we were coming off the hangover of the dot-com bust. And I felt like that was maybe the death of advertising without being able to correlate impact,
Yes.
right? Which, at least for anybody that was getting VC money, there needed to start being a measurable return, right?
Yes.
And so it feels like that was a big shift. But more recently, like, we thought that the internet was kind of a big change, right? And now it feels like the J curve is really starting to escalate,
Yes.
To a degree none of us have ever experienced or can even conceive.
Right.
And I was at a conference just last month hearing a few CMOs talk about how their jobs had changed, and the volume of complex other jobs that, whether it's crisis management or data protection and security. I mean, how many different hats do you have to wear in 2026 than even like pre-pandemic?
That's funny. Good news, I don't have to do data and security, because that would drive me crazy, though I am very involved in data definitions, right? If we have a subscriber, do you and I agree on what churn is? When are you churned? Is it, lots of things like that
These are really critical topics, though, how you define things.
Exactly. How you define the data, making sure everyone's looking at the right thing. And then obviously, we can't talk about change right now without ever talking about AI. And there's the normal things that it makes easier and harder. But I think the thing that I've really found with AI is, one of the things that I think is really exciting about it is it's hard to get an organization always to care about brand. Hey, you should talk this way, and can you make sure you use these colors when you make and this font when you make a PowerPoint template? And I think that stuff is really important. I think it's important for a company to be unified. I think it's important for everyone to speak the same language in the same way, no matter who they're speaking to. And that used to be hard, because it would be like, hey, when you pull PowerPoint, like, make sure you get it from here and you do this and whatever. Now, it's great. We have AI tools that, someone can write content and we can say, oh, the tool is already seeded with our branding and our visual identity and all this other stuff. And it makes it so much easier to align what people are saying across the org. It's like it's like that job is easier now, and it's exciting.
To really have brand cohesion.
Correct.
One of the major benefits. And By the way, is there a particular software that you've been using to feed your like your branding into to do stuff? Because we keep dabbling. I'm not sure we've landed yet.
We have pretty close partnerships with both Amazon and Google, and so we've really partnered with them to use their native tools, but then to customize them for what we've needed. So that's been really great. And we've built agents for our trial sales. We have chatbot technology that we use for customer support, which I also happen to run, and just to make
there you go.
Just to make my CMO job more fun.
Customer support, there you go.
And we're doing a lot of really cool stuff across the company that's making, and we really look at it in two buckets. How are we becoming more efficient as a company, right? Whether that's coding, whether that's writing SEO content, which has been completely blown up.
Revolutionized.
Yes, et cetera. Or, so that's the how are we better at what we do, better, faster, stronger. And then the other side is how are we using AI to provide better products to our customers, right? And there's so much there. And really trying to be mindful and tangible. I think there's a lot of like, AI is going to change this and but really taking, our product, ShipStation, stamps, et cetera. We've been around a long time. We have a ton of data. We really know how to optimize certain things in our software and really bringing that to light for our customers.
Well, so let me ask a hard question about that, because I think this is what so many people are trying to figure out. If you're a marketer, you're working inside of a marketing organization, or if you're an agency, if you're a publisher, if you're here, if you're working in production, right? They like paper was supposed to go away when the internet came, right? And I guess a lot of us would like to believe that we'll be like paper, and they'll still need a lot of us, right? But what do you believe is the future as you think about where budgets are moving, how you're going to allocate resources, when you think about your organization and what's being asked of you? When does the hammer drop that everybody's really got to do more with less, and we're just not playing with features, right? Because I think we've been fooling around a little bit for the last couple years, and now it's like with some of this Anthropic change this very month. We're in a historic month when the world is shifting quickly.
Yes.
And, I don't know that anybody knows what to do.
Yeah. I cannot prognosticate the future. I think the impacts are happening now.
Yeah.
Do I need to hire another contract writer to get more content out? Probably not.
Right.
Right. And so I don't know that it's going to be this, oh my God, you're using AI, you have to cut 20% of your budget.
Right.
And, most of my budget's in media anyway, so I don't know how that's going to change. But I do think it's going to start as flat budgets with rising revenue or rising jobs to do.
That's the hope, right?
Right, that's the hope. And eventually some activities will be replaced. But I will say, I think the most effective, I've never seen a case where AI just comes in and can do the job like that, right? You have to train it.
Everybody's working
You have
more
to
right
iterate,
now, right?
Right. You have
I
to
don't
train.
think shaved hours.
You have to iterate. Well, but I do think like it's, I took not to talk about customer service, but I took a year of contact data, and we worked with our internal tech team, and we built an agent to analyze it, right? So listen to calls, read emails, read chats, and like really figure out, why are people calling us? What are the long ones, right? So it's like, okay.
And did you do that with in-house talent?
In-house.
And just said, figure it out?
Yes.
Because there's no manual.
There's no manual.
And you can go hire the gurus, but do the gurus even know? It changed yesterday.
Yes.
And it's going to change tomorrow.
I do think some of the gurus know best practices, right? Stuff like that. But, Yeah, we built that internally, and part of it
Wow.
is through these partnerships. And so we have help from, the Google Gemini
They
team
give
and
you a
some
little bit
other,
extra love. So
yes,
it's good to be in with the Google and the
and the
Amazon and such.
Amazons and there are lots of them that will help.
Yeah.
But it's really meaningful stuff, which then we can hopefully feed back to product, which then hopefully lowers our contact rate, right? And so you can see how it will help. But sure, is it gonna take jobs? Definitely.
Well, and I think I think we know that's inevitable, and I think the wisdom that people seem to nod their heads around is that the idea of like, well, it's not AI that's going to take your job; it's the person who uses AI that's going to take your job, right? And I think the notion that it can increase capacity. I think
Yeah.
that I'm not working fewer hours than I was,
Correct.
and I'm sure you're not either.
No.
But what we're able to create and the output is expanding
That's right.
so significantly, right? And it seems like what I'm trying to encourage my team to do, and they think I'm crazy probably because I told them yesterday like that basically we talk about aliens landing and they've effectively landed in that humanity has never experienced anything. If you looked out the window and you saw an alien spacecraft hovering, that is the same impact as what is actually happening. We just may not have accepted it yet, but with what
Yes.
robotics and AI are going to be disrupting and the existential implications and a lot of the business implications, it is so profound. I don't think any of us really even understand it. So all we can do is do our best to make friends with it.
Exactly. And use it to our advantage. Like
Yeah.
there's, that project I was talking about would have taken forever
Yeah.
otherwise, right?
Oh.
Or not doable, or I would have had to rely on a third party.
You'd spend $1 million hiring a
Exactly.
firm to listen to all the customer calls,
Exactly.
and
it would have been
somebody deletes
okay.
the file.
Exactly. Right. It's just, so I like to think of it as, what can I do now that I wouldn't have been able to do because I was 10th on that person's list of the
Right.
resource I needed, or was just too insurmountable. So I'm excited about it, but I'm not Pollyannish about
Right.
like the implications. There will be implications. I have kids in their 20s. I
Same.
I
Right.
think about
It's like, well,
what are they going to do?
How do you prepare them, right? But
Yeah.
I think it's like the old thing they used to tell us about hiring people that are curious and hungry and all that.
Yes.
Probably never more important.
Correct. Hire the athlete.
The athlete.
The athlete. We always talk about is someone like a general athlete, or are they good at a particular thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so the
Okay.
athlete
I
is,
see.
in theory, more.
I've never been much of an athlete, so that metaphor didn't make
You're
sense.
a work athlete.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Tell me if you've ever heard of any of these companies: Shopify, DraftKings, Oracle, Warby Parker, Mint Mobile, Quince. I am proud to say that half of the top 10 advertisers in podcasting choose to work with Oxford Road. We are now the world's largest podcast advertising agency, and we do so much more than that. YouTube, radio, streaming. We are on 6 continents working internationally. Reach out to us. We'll tell you about Woven, which is probably the world's largest database of show information that's relevant for brands. Orbit, which is $1.6 billion of aggregated performance data used to de-risk every single campaign. Audiolytics, where we can actually measure ad copy and optimize it to maximize performance. We got a lot going on over here. That's why you can read about us in the Wall Street Journal or the Hollywood Reporter or USA Today or Business Insider. But whatever you need, we try to bring thought leadership that matters to you. Sign up for our newsletter that is called The Influencer. When you go to oxfordroad.com, you can always learn more at the Media Roundtable podcast. We got a lot of interesting content. If you just want to learn about this business, and if you don't care, but you just need somebody to make sure that you're getting outcomes that only we can deliver, go to oxfordroad.com and learn more, and make sure you mention the Media Roundtable, because attribution. That's oxfordroad.com. Okay, let's talk about, while we're on this whole podcast conversation, I feel like in my experience, and I've had the benefit of working with like hundreds of companies, I feel that podcasting, and we can call it audio, which is getting harder to say now because of the collision with video. But I think it's like anywhere endorsements are sold, right? Yep. When endorsements are a hallmark of the channel and the host will actually recommend you to their audience, like we will be there. And I feel that type of media, if we call it creator media or whatever, it's always had a special relationship with B2B.
Yes.
And I know you know that because you've been using it as a tool for a long time, right? What do you chalk that up to? Because you wouldn't think, like, why would a podcast, for example, be more resonant with something that people might think is like for a specific type of customer? Why is it better in many cases?
I think a couple things. One, I always think of it versus selling like a t-shirt. Mm-hmm. You can just show the t-shirt, and either that is something you want to wear or it's not, right? It's very visual. And I can tell you that we sell shipping software and it gets you the lowest rates. Like,
tell me more.
Right. Tell you more. Right. I need 30 seconds of you paying attention.
Yes.
As opposed to you looking at some pretty pictures. By the way, we do television advertising. We do video advertising as well. But, the story, and, I think the other thing is you can tell whether it's a small business, medium size, or enterprise business. You can either do an ad that's feature, right? It does it does this, it does this, it does this. Or you can tell a customer story, which I think that's where I had sort of my podcast endorsement read aha moment. Like, do
you remember specifically what that was?
I don't. It was someone who had kind of a side hustle, or maybe the guest had a side hustle, and they started talking about it. Like,
you heard the organic piece that was like it broke the wall of
correct.
We're just force feeding them to read these lines, and it became content.
It became like, oh my God, yes, we did that. Or
Pinocchio became a real boy.
Exactly. It's like, real. And by the way, a podcast host or creator is a small business, right? Mm-hmm. So they probably are shipping goods, or they probably have an LLC, or they probably send email, right? All these other places I've worked and done endorsement advertising. You can tell that story in a more authentic way. And even if it's just an ad read, well, then you can at least tell what's going on, where I think it's a lot harder in a faster visual ad to get kind of, I would just say, software. Like, it's harder to sell software like that. And I think you see a lot of the B2B companies are selling a software or service. Like, it's just not tangible like this cup.
So what I hear you saying is a big part of why this medium lends itself to, B2 little b mostly, right? But why you see it over indexing, right? Why is it not just Stamps? Why is it Shopify, ZipRecruiter, all the parade of, MailChimp and all that? And it sounds like a big piece of that for you is just that these are slightly more nuanced, more complex things to explain to people. And when you have the luxury of more than just like an image to sell the thing,
that's right.
You go into a long form where you can unpack a thought. And we're here having a conversation. It's a whole different type of the brain.
Exactly.
We just had, our last episode was with Andrew McLuhan. You saw this?
I did.
And I didn't know anything before, like 48 hours beforehand when I was prepping. But I'm like, okay, the medium is the message, and this notion of hot and cold media, that there is media that you have to work harder to consume mentally.
Yes.
And then there's media that you're just kind of there passively experiencing it. And it's not that it's not engaging, but some tap into different parts of the emotions and different types of the parts of the brain. And it seems like this type of media, the intimacy of it, and the fact that it doesn't fill in all the gaps for you, you're also able to access people in a way that they're engaged.
I think I think about it, I think that's a good way of putting it. I think the other thing too is like all those companies you named, Like the visual for all of them is a person looking at a computer. Do you know what I mean? Like it's someone doing their
That's the
e-tailing or selling.
demonstration.
Right. And
It's going to be screenshots.
and actually one of the things I love about advertising for ShipStation, it's like I could show a warehouse, not not an office or something like that. But it is, and so you passively see that. I always kid when someone tells me they loved an ad that they saw on TV. I always ask them what it was for. A friend of mine who's in advertising actually.
Oh, they never know the answer.
Never
to
know.
That. Don't watch the Super Bowl and play that game.
It's the Super Bowl. I remembered who the ads were for this time, but it is interesting. Like I think about all the car insurance ads, right? And I think they're getting better, right? So the State Farm one's always red, and Flo, is progressive, right? And so it's they're getting better, but it's like, oh my God, I love that ad. It was so funny. It's like, what was it for?
No, it was a celebrity vehicle that helped their brand. You gave them good free exposure and you felt good doing it. But yeah, no, if you don't even know, it's not that everything has to be like a formulaic direct response unit, right? But if you don't even know who it's brought to you by, I think you missed the plot.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Well, it's a good ad. It's a good piece of media. I don't know if it's a good ad.
And if you were to give advice to people that are thinking about engaging with this type of media, what advice would you give them? Like, and I'll lead you a little bit on this.
Okay. Good.
Do you think about the turf war at all in different companies that you've worked with?
What do you mean?
Well, we've worked in some categories where there was an arms race, and it was going to be this brand or who was going to be the mattress company of record for podcasts, right? And you couldn't, because once you locked up that talent, you had an annuity, and you wanted to like lock up all these territories, right? Is that still a thing? Do you think?
It's interesting. It's very interesting. I cut my teeth at LegalZoom, and I don't want to say we had no competition. But our next...
It was truly disruptive.
And the next nearest competitor was a tenth our size.
Right.
So we were the arms, if you will.
Well, and to be fair, you had used personalities as part of the growth story, right?
Correct.
So
you
bought all that
We had started, and I can't take credit for this because I came in after it, but they started the company with TV and started with radio and became podcast advertising, right? We owned Drive Time Media back in a day where everyone listened to AM radio on their way to work. And it really built the brand. I know. It's so funny. When I came in, I was like, oh, I guess I'll have to start listening to AM radio. And I was like, wow. It was like, it was Dan Pat, right? It was like Dan Patrick and Colin Cowherd. And then when I went to Cabbage, I was like, oh my God, so many people are bidding on the same SEM terms and all this other stuff. And it was interesting at Cabbage, we were against PayPal and Stripe. We're like, we're not winning, right? You can't win the arms race there. And so you learn to be scrappier. It's why we expanded media, went into content. We were really great at PR there. That worked well for us. And so the arms race is tough.
Yeah.
At my current business, at Stamps and Station, we advertise. We have lots of competitors for ShipStation, but USPS, the post office advertises, UPS advertises, FedEx advertises. So again, it's like, how can you? This is where that full funnel really comes in my mind. Like, how can we make the whole better? So that we don't have to get in a bidding war over, the search term best shipping software for a small business, right? Or and you come up, or by the way, when you go to ChatGPT or whatever your AI search engine of choice is, and you put that in, we come up at the top because we have the authority and the content in all the right places. So I think you have to. I'm not into the arms race because I usually don't work for the winning company, or let me say it this way, the one with an unlimited war chest. be relevant, be first where you should be first,
Right.
but then fight on other battlefields so that your whole is better than the other whole.
Well, and another piece of what I'm taking from this is like you need to play your position, whatever that is, right? It's nice if you've got the war chest and you're first mover, and all you got to do is create more headroom, right? It's a cool situation to be in, but we've been in spots, we've been in like dog fights where we ended up with somebody that wanted to be in that spot and was behind, and you can get there, but sometimes it takes years, and you're like stealing bases all the time to try to make it up. But I think whatever your strategy is, and some categories are more winner take all. Like your market cap depends on, are you first, second, or third in this period of time, and then it's a whole different equation.
That's
right?
right.
So I think you gotta. It sounds like it really depends on your situation, but it also sounds like something that you do consider how you stack up before you know how you're going to go onto the battlefield.
Absolutely. And you see it mostly in search, right?
Yeah.
A little in
How much
a
is
little
that
audio.
changing? I mean, do you feel like, have we crossed over?
I don't. It's really interesting what's going on. We definitely haven't crossed over. Like the volume coming from AI search is still nothing compared to, traditional SEO. In some ways, the biggest detriment has been the Gemini answer, right, which has shoved everything else down.
Right.
And it'll be interesting to see what they do with that.
Correct.
Where they sell advertising, how they sell advertising on that.
That will be interesting.
And the other engines, like we do really well with them. So it's less traffic, higher converting. So it's great.
Right.
I love that. I want that to grow, but the demand comes and goes, if you will. But it's interesting, but it makes you, I actually think one of the things I've really liked about it, it's made you have better hygiene, like things that I don't want to say fall to the bottom of the to-do list, but like making sure your Wikipedia page is correct, or that you have cleanliness in your Reddit forums, or
it's a good use of some of the modern adaptations. Do a little sweep.
Exactly. I think a lot of the third-party validators too gives them a little more authority, whether it's G2 or Trustpilot or those things. Super important.
Super important. Yeah. So we get some decent inbound for our little shop. We'll get maybe 5 to 10 companies inquiring a week.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing. But we've done a lot of content, right? And it was probably 6 months ago was the first time we said, "How'd you hear about us?" And they said, "I asked Perplexity." And
interesting. Did you make them put a "How did you hear about us" survey on your thing?
You think I don't have a hidey how?
I just want to make sure you're eating your own dog food.
Hell yes, yes. And then, but like, I think I saw 2 in a row a couple days ago. Well, it wasn't even Perplexity. It was just that AI instructed them to come to us when they asked, and so that was new. I'm seeing small sample size here, not statistically significant, but I am seeing the shift this month.
Yeah,
this is like the COVID March 2020 of.
It doesn't surprise me though, because it's also your target, right? Your target is probably tech savvy.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So, anyway, it's an interesting time to be alive.
Yes,
and
it
I'm
is.
Glad
it's
that
super
we get
interesting
to do these things. So, look, we're only skimming the surface on a lot of this, and you've gotten to see the business from a lot of different angles, and you've seen all of the changes that are afoot. What advice do you have for marketers? What advice would you give to other brands that are familiar with the companies you've helped to build and really want to be successful but may not have that experience?
I would say a couple things. Like, one, my superpower has been to know how our business works, the numbers, what drives the P&L inside and out, right? Marketing is, I like to always say that if you need to reduce expenses and you don't want to cut heads, Hi, it's always marketing.
Yeah.
And so you need to know the efficacy of what you're spending money on and how it's driving what drives your business. And so I can't emphasize enough, like, whether it's, just knowing your way around an income statement and balance sheet and being able to analyze spend, whether that be media spend, headcount spend, other spend, is super important. And it may sound like people may be listening and be like, yeah, of course. I'm not sure that's always been the role of the CMO and people who've come up through marketing. So I think it's super important. The other thing I would say is embrace the tools. Like, I've never done this, but I've always dreamed of it, which is to have one day a quarter where just everyone who sends me a blind email about their interesting technology has 30 minutes to do like a Shark Tank pitch day.
Yes.
And like embrace the technology. Just have open ears, listen, and you will kiss a lot of frogs, but you're going to find something that works for you really well. Or you'll hear something that's like, oh, that's not exactly what I need, but what if we did this in here? And right, it just keeps you sharp. Because I think, I've been doing this a while, and there's a tendency to put your head down and say, this has worked for me here, or it worked for me here. I've never had that work. And you kind of shut it off. But you gotta always try. It's kind of like my relationship with the Meta properties. I've never gotten that advertising to really hum for me, but I keep trying. And one day I'll find
the walls
right
will come down.
I'll find the right product, creative media that make it work.
Well, and I think that we're in a time when the more of those things that we've been working on for decades or years are starting to happen, and I've been seeing them every day, increasingly. What's next for Octane?
So Octane is growing and moving and shaking. We're really focusing. I would say in the past year, we're really doing some work to consolidate some of our brands. So, we now have ShipStation, which is our flagship platform, ShipStation API, which is our API for bigger customers who need a pipe to the carriers who want to print labels, and also comes with great features like analytics and lots of other things that are in the platform as well. And to really grow that brand to kind of be the definitive logistics and fulfillment platform. And then the other is we just had a huge announcement in Europe around, so MetaPack is our enterprise software in Europe. We just announced a huge intelligence suite, which is really cool. We can take data and tell you the fastest way or the cheapest way, or whatever your parameters are to get your package from A to B. And we are soon to roll out our intelligence suite in the US as well, or North America as well. And super excited about that. We are cranking out features at record pace. And so really excited to fulfill the fulfillment needs of everyone from, mom and pop small business to global e-commerce company.
Laura Goldberg, CMO at Octane, thank you for sharing so much of your storied career and feedback with us. It is the Breakfast of Champions. I think you've made me a better marketer today, and I think others as well. This podcast is brought to you by Oxford Road. Doesn't say it on my logo. We're going to have to fix it. We do need to fix that. Which AI tool would you use to get that done in 30 seconds?
Claude
for logos.
Yes.
I love Claude.
They really
I'm getting
crank
confronted by people about how close I am with Claude right now, but I haven't used it up on logos.
I think you could do it. They make a mean PowerPoint. I think they could do that. Brought to you by Claude, maybe.
Brought to you by Claude. Brought to you by Oxford Road, where we want you to succeed in podcasting, audio, and creator media, and to use your influence for good. As members of the marketing community, we have the power to advance voices that don't just entertain, but also edify and to build bridges across differences around some of the most important topics of our age. Did you know that? That's why you love the medium.
It is.
If you're a marketer and you're looking to align your brand values with extraordinary business outcomes, you can always reach out to our agency. You can ask Claude. It'll tell you. Go to Oxford Road. It's the only place to go. Go to oxfordroad.com. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, The Influencer. Do you subscribe to The Influencer?
I do.
Okay, I'm glad to hear this. If you have feedback for us, like I said, we're big on feedback around here. It's info@mediaroundtable.com. Do check out Ad Infinitum. That is the only podcast about audio-focused creative. So if you're deep in the weeds, it's hosted by the great Stu Redwine. Special thanks, of course, to Laura and Octane for lending her to us for this conversation, and to Haley, Bianca, Rocio, Kyle, Ezra, Everett, Neil, and the team at Podcast One. As always, influence responsibly.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here.